Hi, in this video we will learn how to create user sessions in Altogic. But before doing some practical examples, let's briefly talk about what we mean by sessions and why we need them. Sessions are, in short, sessions are used to protect some specific endpoints in your backend applications. For some endpoints, you can specify that that endpoint might be protected by a session token, and unless the calling party provides a session token, valid session token, then that endpoint cannot be called, and Altogic will raise an error in such cases. For this purpose, I already have an application called random codes. This is a very basic application. I also loaded some data into this application. It's basically a list of codes from popular people. Let me show you what I mean. Let's go to the test panel for this one. And if I go to get the list of the codes, that's random codes, it returns back to me some codes based on some specific groups, and the author, who mentioned about that code, and the textual information about the code. Okay. Right now, this endpoint is public, so anybody that has this endpoint can call it and can get the responses back. We would like to protect these endpoints to people that are authenticated, that they've got a valid session token. How we will be doing that one? It's quite easy actually. Let's start with creating a user model here. Okay. We don't need timestamps right now. I will not be creating actually let's create the post one, get one. We don't need to put and delete right now. Let's create these things. Okay. In user, we can say that, hey, we've got some name of the user. And we might also have the email of the user. Okay. And we already have the automatically generated create read updates, create read, let's say CRUD endpoints, some of them. Let's go back to here. Let's go to the users model. And if I try to get the list of the users, this will return empty because we don't have anything yet. So let's create a new user. Name, let's say John, email, john@email.com. Okay. This successfully created the user. If I try to get the user, the list of the users, then I can get only just one user here. Okay. Then what we need to do is the following. Let's assume that one of the users created an account and they log into your application. So let's create a login service. Okay. Login. This will be a post method. Okay. This will be, let's say, login. And the rooted service will be a new service called login. Let's create that one. Let's go to this one. I'm not doing anything like the password checks and so on, but you can do if you want. I mean, you can add some password field here, and you can check in the service whether the password matches, etc. I will just briefly create a session for a specific user. Okay. In this case, what we will be doing is the following. Actually, I need to go back to the endpoint because I need to add something here. Sorry. Here, this one. We will also get a user ID. Okay. To this service. So this service will be providing the user ID as an input parameter. Okay. What we will be doing is the following. We will be creating a session. So the first thing we can do is that we can create a session for the user in consideration. For each session, when you would like to create a session, you need to provide a user ID, entity ID. In this case, the user ID is coming as in the URL path of the endpoint. User ID, we will be using that user ID, and we can also specify whether this session will expire or not. I mean, if no expiry, then this session will not be expired unless you delete it. So in this case, let's put a no expiry session. Then as a response, we will be returning back the session that has been created. Okay, so that's it. So let's go back to our test panel. And let's go here, login. Who will be logging to the application? John will be logging in. Actually, let's create another user actually. Let's put here Mary, second user. This is the second user. Let's get the list of the users. We've got two entries here. Then let's assume that John has logged in to the application. So what's the ID of John? This is John's ID, and I need to put here the ID of John here. If I run this thing, then Altogic successfully created a session for this user, and I created a session token. Let's look at what kind of information is stored in this session object. User ID, this is the ID, exactly the same number. This is the ID of John. Token, this is a JSON web token, including some specific information about the session, the creation time of the session, and also the user agent. This is basically the device information, like I'm using the Chrome web browser, and I'm using a Mac computer, Mac laptop, and some information about the device that the user has created the session. So this is the session I created. What I will do is the following. Let me go to the endpoints. One of the endpoint that we use, like to randomly getting the codes, this was the endpoint. What I will do is the following. I will specify that in order for this endpoint to be called by third parties, they need to provide the valid session token. Okay, let's update this thing. If I go back to my, let's say, test panel, if I go to the codes, the random codes, this is that one. If I try to run this thing, this time Altogic will raise an error saying that, hey, no valid session token provided in the session header. Because we didn't, since we make this endpoint session protected, we need to provide a session token in the header of the request. So if we go back to here, we need to provide the session parameter here. What will be the session parameter that we need to provide? This is the session token that we need to provide. Let me copy and paste this thing and come back to here. If I paste this thing here, then the endpoint has been successfully executed and the response is returned back. Okay, so this is how we are using the sessions. So let's continue to our example. Let's assume that we've got another service endpoint that we say logout. Okay, this is a post method. Let's say logout. Okay, then this will be I don't need anything actually. Let's put here logout. Okay, this is a session required for this service to execute, because we can log out in order to be able to log out, we should already be logged in, so a session needs to be created. So let's create this one. Let's go to this service. And I need to, in the logout part, I can do whatever information, whatever updates that I would like to do into the database. But what I will do is basically I will be deleting the session token, deleting the session, okay, for that specific login session. How will I be doing that one? How can I get the session information? The thing is the following. When you define the logout, you specified that a session required. In that case, okay, let me go to this one again, service. In that case, as an input parameter, okay, Altogic gets a session token. Using that session token, Altogic fetches the session information, okay? So this means that as an input, I will be getting the session information. So what's the user ID for the session? This is the session user ID. What's the session token? This is the session token here, okay? So using that information, I will be deleting the specific session, and as a response, I will be returning a success response. Then I will be logging out and deleting that specific session. Let's test this thing also. Okay, so this is the logout one. For this thing to work, I need to provide the session token. Okay, so this is my session token. Copy this thing. To come back here as a header, I need to provide the session token here. Okay, let's run this thing. Success. So we successfully deleted the session. Let's make sure, because in the get random codes we already have the session token which is deleted right now. Okay, if I try to call this thing, Altogic will raise an error because your session token is not valid anymore. It's not authorized. Your session has expired. Okay, so for that purpose we need to create a new session. Let's create a new session. This is the new session token. Okay. If I go back to here, headers, if I replace this thing with this new session, then in that case it will work. Let's do another login, second one. Okay. Altogic also creates another session token. So let's go back to our services, because right now the user has 2 active sessions. Okay. Let's create another endpoint, get user sessions, and we will be creating a new service called get user sessions, and this will require a session key, okay, for this service to run. Sessions, actually let's put it like this, users, user ID, and we will be getting the session for that specific user. I can do it like this, or I can do something like this, session. That's it. Let's use the simple one. Okay, let's go to the user sessions. Then what I will be using is the following. I will be using the get all sessions of user. This is that one. I need to just provide the user ID. Where I get the user ID, since I'm using a session, this endpoint is protected with a session token, then I can access to the session information and get the user ID. Then as a response, I will be returning back the sessions of that specific user. Okay, let's go back to here. This is my new endpoint. Of course, to run this thing, I need to provide the session token. So this is a session token that I can use. If I put here the session token, if I run this thing, as you can see, there are 2 active sessions associated with that same user. Okay. There are also some other, let's say, nodes that you can use for the sessions. You can use, for example, delete all sessions of a user. This one, you just need to provide the ID of the user, then it invalidates, deletes all the active sessions of the user. Or you can get a specific session or delete a specific session. That's all for session management. I hope that helps.